Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hopefully, you had a wonderful night yesterday after 2 days of information. My name is Jung Chuan. I'm Associate Professor of Geospatial Science at Interfaith State University. I'm a moderator of this session this morning, and I'm very excited about this session because I have something new to learn, especially for myself. But this morning, this section, we have basically two presentations and 30 minutes each. We're going to start first with the very first very exciting presentation by Jonathan Fisk and Cozy Brent. The presentation is about building the civic infrastructure of the future with CRM and GIS, also known as Any Map, Anywhere. It's very exciting. Okay, so please welcome Jonathan and Cozy.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming to the last day, waking up bright and early for our presentation. Really excited to be here today and show you a little bit of a really cool Esri integration that John and some other colleagues at our company developed with the town of Cary. So with that, I'm just going to kind of give a quick overview of our agenda today. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about kind of what led us to this integration, and then we're going to show you a demonstration of a ArcGIS dashboard that shows some Salesforce data from the town of Cary in a ArcGIS dashboard, and then we'll get into some Esri widgets and web maps, the integration itself, Any Map Anywhere inside of Salesforce. And before I hand it over to John, I'll just give a brief introduction. Who is G&H International? We've been working in the GIS and technology space for over 25 years. We're based in Falls Church, Virginia, and we work with organizations to address complex challenges by delivering innovative solutions and approaches to technology. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, John Fisk, to share a little bit about Any Map Anywhere in Salesforce.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much, Cozy. Yeah, it's really great to be able to talk about the things that we've done just in the neighborhood. You're from Durham, Cozy. You live here. I lived in Charlotte for a long time. Now I actually, my home is in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. We've been kind of introduced to this problem by the town of Cary, and we're going to pose this challenge in two kind of cartoon scenarios. The first is, our CRM is how town employees engage with each other to meet citizen needs. The town of Cary has implemented a robust 311 kind of call center information system, and they use Salesforce to kind of think of the citizen as the customer, and how efficient can we be to resolve the problems and the concerns of citizens. And so Salesforce is the technology they're using to do not only 311, but work orders, to do some asset management events, all sorts of kind of business processes in the town are run using Salesforce. While on the other hand, they have also invested in their GIS platform for many years. And so your typical Salesforce, or rather GIS user, our GIS maps, or has maps of public infrastructure, utility infrastructure above and below ground, town-owned areas, center lines, building footprints. You're here. You know what you use the GIS for. Everyone uses our data. Everyone, that is, except users of Salesforce, which we will get to later on. So when we were working on this initiative that the town kind of embarked on called Let's Envision and Create the Civic Infrastructure of the Future. So it's, I don't know, what is that? What do you mean? Well, the way it was kind of, we worked through it as a group, is that the future is going to have problems that we have not seen. It's going to have challenges that we can't sit here and, oh yeah, we'll do that in the future, and we'll do that in the future. That's the thing about the future, is you don't know. But what, in the information age, we can pretty confidently say is, we're going to need data to solve the problem that we haven't seen yet. So how do we make data as easy to use as the water you turn on in your house? How do you make GIS a utility? We use water to make coffee in the morning, to make water the garden. I mean, that's what the pipes are underneath here. So the civic infrastructure of the future, even though there's pipes here, that's what we're representing. GIS is the pipes. Salesforce is the pipes. The information system is the pipes. So that when you proverbially turn on the faucet for GIS, you don't have to be someone who's been doing GIS for 30 years like myself. That's not what the future is. Well, if you study GIS for 30 years, you'll be able to do the future problems. Well, the future problems have to be, solved by not just the experts. I'm glad I don't know how the pipes are all connected. And so that's kind of the goal, is to make this information technology as simple for the rest of us, to use to solve the problems. And those little bubbles are who you're working for. The civic infrastructure of the future, the Salesforce and GIS and other information systems should be useful for the EOC director, the town council, the 311 citizen advocate. So that's the overall goal. And so the problem is a simple problem, that between the two of these platforms that represent a lot of the business processes in the town, they have a hard time using one another's data. So, and this is a literal example of what that means. Well, what do you mean they have a hard time using data? It's just, put a table over here, import, export. I mean, how hard can it be? Well, this is honestly a good representation. GIS, so let's just say Elizabeth Esri says, GIS answers so many questions, but when someone says, well, that's in Salesforce, the conversation just stops. If only Salesforce was a data layer, we could visualize it with all our other GIS data, so it would totally change the way we work together. So that's one simple example. And I'm going to go through two examples here as the presentation goes on. And so in order to turn kind of a Salesforce layer, or rather object, into a GIS layer, you need some sort of, the fancy word is ETL tool, or import and export process. The town of Cary has used a variety of tools to do that. Safe Software's FME tool is one that used this, and at the time, the data set that represents 311 is where kind of the project began. And a 311, like 911, many times has a location. It has an address. Where is the issue at hand? Where is the pothole? Where, do we need to do a home inspection? So that, in some ways, this was a very straightforward place to start. And when you're moving, the benefit of doing this is if it becomes an Esri layer, well, then you can use Esri tools. This is the simple, I'm going to show two problems. This is the simple start problem. So what you're seeing here is an example of, boy, once the data becomes a feature layer in Esri, you can make the coolest dashboards. And Salesforce does not have a kind of a ubiquitous geospatial view of the data. This example, this dashboard that we created, called the Neighborhood Explorer, was to give some context to the for what's going on in the town for this. And I'm now going to pop over to do a quick little demonstration. This is not this is a demonstration of some public 311 data. So this is not their actual dashboard, but just to give a sense for what this looks like is, you've got all the reasons why people call 911, the call categories, and as you know, as GIS professionals, you can use the clustering capability. This is not a Salesforce. You're using all the tools, capabilities of the web map. And so just take a look as I zoom in. This clustering is automatic. There was 50,000 records here. As you zoom in, you can see the neighborhoods and what times of calls, even down to some of these locations that have a single house has 11 calls to 311. You can see the breakdown. So there's a lot of kind of benefits. Once this data can kind of be moved to the Esri, you can experience it using these geospatial tools. And I'm going to just filter this because we've used dashboards to do that. Now I'm filtering by garbage, recycling, and yard waste. And as I go through, I want to click on another type of data here, the loose leaf collection. You can see, via this dashboard, not many people call to get their leaves picked up in front of the yard in July because they're green and on the trees. But you can see the pickup at some point during the year. In November, they had 311 calls for questions about leaf pickup. Okay, so this is just the Esri kind of centric way of looking at it. Now I'm going to pop over and I'm going to show two different use cases here. Let me come back to this slide deck and let's look at another scenario. So not only does GIS need Salesforce data, but Salesforce needs GIS data because that's what the people on the phone are working with. They're logging calls using Salesforce. They're creating work orders using Salesforce. And in the, a common workflow is there's so much GIS data. Let me go to the portal and go leave Salesforce and retype the person's name to see where they are internal. So embedding an experience inside of the same tool that you're using to talk to the citizen has a lot of benefits. So if I can use Google Maps in Salesforce, why can't I use all our own data? Because Salesforce has got maps. Just Google it, Salesforce Maps, and it's just Google. It's not the town's utility infrastructure. It's a base map. So, Esri kind of community is ever helpful, and there's a strong desire to provide, curated content to all these Salesforce users in the town. How can I share my web maps directly with Salesforce? And if a little PSA for Esri, last fall they came up with some advice for doing that. They have a blog called Integrating Salesforce and ArcGIS. We read that. It's a really informative kind of survey of all the ways you can bring these tools together. And at the end, I would suggest, is the most important advice on this blog. It says, consider authenticating from the beginning. Don't merely put a map in the app or create something in the tech world, something called an iframe. You can just stick something inside of a Salesforce window and it's a Esri map, but it doesn't interact with the rest of the environment around. It's kind of a simple interface. And so that's what this example is that you're seeing. Here we go. Let me mix the next slide. So what that means is when you're in Salesforce, you're going to have to log in to ArcGIS. So this example means that if you're a Salesforce user, you're also an Esri user. And once you get there, all of the sharing, all of the products, all of the layers, all of the web maps come along with you. And so this what I'm going to demonstrate in a moment is a custom application that we developed that brings these two kind of environments together. Not as simple as just copying the data that you saw first. This example is a much more tighter integration. And let's see, and we do this by for every, if Salesforce you can think of in a simple way, they use the term object instead of the word feature layer. So at a Salesforce object, you can see right here, could be the case table. All of the 311 cases are in the 311 case table. And for that, what we've added is kind of the ability to associate a web map. And then we built on what the town of Cary had already established, which was they created this location object that logged and kind of maintained the coordinate location for assets and addresses across the town. So visualizing that is kind of where we kind of picked up on with that infrastructure. So with no further ado, let me go into the demonstration here and pull this up. So you can see here, right now, I am not in Cary's Salesforce. I'm in a kind of a private, small sandbox that you can download. If you want to buy Salesforce, you go in there and you click the button. You can download a little desktop copy to play around with and use. So that's what you're seeing right here. But we've embedded our application. So I'm demonstrating the point that I'm in Salesforce, but to use this, I have to be an Esri user. Okay, I have and kind of have all the permissions for that. So this is an example of a. Let me just start at the beginning area. Here's the case object, you might say, and it's just a list. A list is a common, is kind of how you interact with a lot of the Salesforce data. And there is a case here about leaf pickup that someone called up and hey, to the 311 center, and you know, I think I may have have I really missed it? I've got such a huge pile of leaves. What's the leaf schedule? When can you come pick it up? So this is a case when as I click on that and on that item, that record, I now can kind of see where that call is calling from. And there's a whole pile of widgets along here. So this is the custom application. We're familiar with, you know, the base maps that you can switch from, the legend that you can use. You could print maps. The really exciting widget here that we created is kind of a long-standing Esri complaint that I would say many people have had, is the ability to pick a web map that you want after you're already in the viewer. So here I am. I'm taking a call about leaf collection, and boy, I sure wish there was a map that had leaf status on it. So I'm just going to pick the leaf status web map. Okay, and so anything that's associated, shared, I guess, with the organization or privately, you're able to kind of pull in and use as context. If the CRM is the situation manager, really, if the CRM manages all these crises or calls, the GIS has potential to provide an infinite amount of context, because you never know what the citizen's talking about. There's an infinite number of reasons a citizen might call almost. So the context, this is kind of how we see marrying these two technologies. CRM is the issue, and GIS offers the context. So I can click on, you know, some of the leaf zone information. So it's telling me, well, the first leaf pickup, yeah, you missed that. That was in November. But we can see the last one. I guess they did miss that too. That was the end of January. The other thing is what we're doing is we're not doing ETL. We're not, in this example here, we're not really copying data to show it together. We're using real-time information. So the town of Cary also does a lot with inspections. They keep track of where their inspectors are inspecting, and you can bring in anything that you can put in a web map, like where the inspector is now. Has this house been inspected yet? You know, all of this is, it could be vehicles being tracked. So remember this dot, this little black circle? That's the call. That's who I'm on the phone with. And I've just said, well, yeah, we've got an inspector around the corner. They can be there in a few minutes. So this isn't high-end, super complicated integration. It's just the ability to put a web map into the context of any record, anywhere in Salesforce. And let me go back to, just to kind of wrap this up. We have a kind of a list of some challenges. I'm going to run this here. That some advice. I started with the problem, and now I'm going to just provide some experience and some advice that we've had as we're doing this. You know, CRM and GIS are built to solve very different problems, and that's kind of the beauty of bringing them together. So communication, processes. That's what the CRM is for, and you know, just not to say that. I mean, we've used Survey 123 for all kinds of amazing processes on the GIS side. So just we do that too, but in this space, the context is what the GIS offers. So the example that you saw, this is kind of one of the most challenging and probably the most important. The example that you saw with 311 is somewhat simple because it's an address. It's a place where you need to go to address an issue. Well, if you're using Salesforce to keep track of maybe projects that you're working on, a project might be a line or a point or a polygon, but in Salesforce, it's a single list. So as you're going about, yeah, I saw this presentation. We'll just turn this one Salesforce table into a GIS table. More often than not, your Salesforce layers are going to be a mixture of what you would want to be a point and a line and a polygon. You know, so that data modeling exercise can be kind of challenging, and you have to wrestle with that. And the application that we showed here, the custom application that put the map in the app, you might say, is showcasing kind of the context for any record anywhere in Salesforce, and that is fairly repeatable. But when you do a workflow, like say if you're managing easements, well, that's a specific process that you go through, and to really to marry these technologies together, you have to do more than just make one tool that's associated with, that does one thing. There's a need to create a lot of little tools that make GIS answer the only question that the easement person might have, or the only question that the building inspector might need to answer. So there's some custom that's kind of the what's next is make this work with asset management workflows and other types of examples. So I think I'm probably out of time here, but do we have some time for questions? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We still have some time for questions. Good presentation.
No, thank you.
We have about 7 minutes. Any questions? It's my question. One
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
So if we use this one, do we have to have a license of ArcGIS? Do we have to have a
Yes.
license for both?
Yes. That is the beauty kind of this is that is that to have a GIS manager who's usually supporting GIS users. The vision for this is that now with a way to deliver web maps to Salesforce, the GIS user or manager isn't just making GIS users happy. The GIS user or manager rather is serving Salesforce users by having by requiring that you're a full authenticated user in both platforms. You've really changed the kind of the scale and who you're supporting instead of all the GIS questions go on the GIS portal kind of type of thing, or requiring desktop or pro or something. You have a way to deliver a web map into Salesforce. And that web map, you can do so much now with web maps. And it's not just one layer, it's a collection of layers created painstakingly with pop-ups and graphs and scale dependency, so you can make it so easy to work with. And that's, I began by, you don't want the future to require someone with 30 years of experience to get insight from that. You really want to make it simple, and there's so much of that simplicity that's being encapsulated into a web map. And the web map, to answer your question, requires kind of that authentication, especially for the sharing privileges. And if you want to use this within your organization, you're going to be sharing content that's not public. You're going to be sharing content that the organization needs, and to do that, you need an authenticated user.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
As you were showing the various web maps that could be opened up within there, does it maintain and extend as you're selecting the various different types of web maps?
Yes, yes, yes. Not only that, we set it so that list is sensitive or aware of your favorited web maps because you've logged in, and so what that does is puts the preferred ones, like everyone gets these, but at the bottom tacks on any web map you favorited. And a lot of people who create their own content, like, nobody makes a map as good as I do. I hate the way that such a total. So when you assemble that data, it's there at your fingertips personally. You don't have to use what everyone else is using. Yes.
Question related to those web maps. So we looked at some demos for Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
We have our asset management system connected to our current homegrown contact center. So we select features, it updates the web service, prices EAM. Within those web maps, when you make a selection on that, are you able to pass those selected values from the web map into the case, for instance? Like if you want to pull additional data through?
Right. So I didn't get to go through the full demonstration. I'd be happy to show you afterwards. But you're right. That's really important to be able to use the map to click on a different case, because you don't know who's behind it. I mean, that's what's missing. That's why we're bringing these together. Or spinning off a new work order or something using that input.
Thank you very much. I think if you have questions, please contact me. We are moving on to the second presentation.